This episode, Why Utopian Society is Flawed from the Timeless Lens series, is brought to you by Viscard Studio.
Have you ever found yourself maybe just gazing out the window, wondering what an ideal society might look like? Not starting completely fresh, but using everything we've learned, all the tools we have now.
It's a classic human thought, isn't it? And today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that idea through H.G. Wells's really quite groundbreaking work, A Modern Utopia.
Right, and it's not just some dry blueprint. Wells presents it as this exploration. He uses these two characters, explorers almost.
Exactly. There's the narrator, our sort of rational voice, and then his companion, the botanist, who's much more, let's say, emotionally driven.
And our mission today is really to immerse ourselves in their experience of this world. What makes it tick? What are the challenges? And surprisingly, how deeply human is it all?
And right off the bat, what makes it modern compared to, say, Plato or Thomas More is this core idea Wells puts forward.
He says it's not static, but kinetic. I love that phrasing.
It's designed not as a permanent state, but as a hopeful stage, leading to a long ascent of stages. It's meant to evolve, to improve.
Which is such a contrast to those older utopias that often felt like they were trying to freeze time, to lock in perfection, and stop change altogether.
Precisely. They wanted to dam back development, as Wells put it. He wanted something flowing, moving forward.
It really is a fascinating starting point, and Wells makes it feel immediate, doesn't he? By having these explorers just sort of arrive there.
Yes, they land on this planet that's physically identical to ours. The same continents, the same islands, the same oceans and seas, but it's weaving a different fate.
That subtle difference, that uncanny valley feeling almost, must be so jarring for them.
And it makes the comparison with our own world incredibly vivid for the reader, too, through their eyes.
So they arrive. What's the first big hurdle? I mean, practically speaking.
Well, language, naturally. How does a world state communicate? Wells touches on things like Esperanto, those constructed languages we've tried.
But Utopia doesn't go that route.
No, its language is described as a living tongue, an animated system of imperfections. Each person modifies it slightly.
Wow, so it embraces imperfection.
It seems so. It's a coalesced language, built on the idea that language is the nourishment of the thought of man. It's organic, dynamic, not rigid. A very different approach.
That feels very modern, actually. And speaking of modern ideas, what about the core values?
Tolerance is huge. Wells is emphatic. Universal toleration is certainly a modern idea, and it is upon modern ideas that this world state rests.
So difference isn't just accepted, it's valued, unlike some older models.
Exactly. Individuality is foundational, not something to be smoothed over for the sake of uniformity. It's seen as vital.
Okay, that sounds incredibly open. But then there's a catch, isn't there, around liberty?
Yes, the narrator points out that perfect absolute liberty is kind of a myth when you live in a society. All other liberty is a compromise, he says.
That's a strong statement. So how do they handle that?
The aim is to find a balance. The state tries to chip away just all those spendthrift liberties that waste liberty, and not one liberty more.
Spendthrift liberties, what does that mean exactly? Like freedoms that ultimately harm the collective?
That seems to be the idea. Pruning away the excesses to preserve the core freedoms that matter for everyone's well-being. It does make you think about which freedoms we might consider spendthrift today.
And this balance allows for some pretty significant freedoms, right? Like travel.
Oh, absolutely. The freedom of movement is key. The explorers find the entire world is open and accessible and as safe for the wayfarer as France or England is today.
Imagine that. No borders in the way we know them and safe passage everywhere.
It prevents people clustering in just a few safe or desirable spots, and it reflects what Wells calls a modern detachment from place. People aren't bound to the land anymore, like serfs were adscript to the glebe.
So this mobility changes everything. Work, lifestyle.
Completely. It allows for things like migratory work for mining or people having seasonal summer homes in the mountains easily. It's a much more fluid way of life.
So if the world is fluid and open, what does it actually look like? How is it designed? You mentioned aesthetics.
Right. The narrator observes, quite bluntly, that ugliness is the measure of imperfection.
Wow. So beauty isn't just nice to have, it's almost a moral indicator.
It seems that way. Everything. Infrastructure included bridges, tunnels, roads. They're all meant to be beautiful things. Function isn't enough. Form matters deeply.
And they have that wild idea about voting buildings out.
Ah, yes. Aesthetic ostracism. Local votes to decide which building gets pulled down each year. Wells calls it a cheap and practical device for the aesthetic education of the public.
Can you imagine? Community debates about architectural merit leading to demolition. It's radical, but maybe effective for raising standards.
It certainly suggests a very engaged public, deeply invested in their environment, and this focus on design and cleanliness carries through to everyday things.
Like transport.
Definitely. Smooth roads, light railways, even noiseless trams and the trains. They're described as a peculiar kind of hotel corridor that flies out the Earth at 200 miles an hour.
200 miles an hour, that shrinks the planet incredibly.
It does. And living spaces follow suit. Think efficiency, cleanliness, automated inns with soap from machines.
And that detail about the room price doubling if you leave the bathroom messy.
Right. A strong incentive for personal responsibility. And interestingly, most people live in residential clubs, not isolated houses.
Fostering community, I suppose.
That seems to be the goal. Congenial companionship rather than solitary living.
Okay, so the social fabric and environment sound quite different. What about the engine driving it all? The economy, how does that work?
Well, money exists. It's seen as necessary, but it's measured differently in units of energy.
Units of energy, not gold, not fiat currency.
Exactly. The whole economy is geared towards the most efficient application of energy for human service. It's about resource management on a planetary scale.
And that line about no imports but meteorites and no exports at all?
Yeah, that really stops you, doesn't it?
What?
It implies a completely self-contained, self-sufficient world economy. No external trade needed.
That self-sufficiency must shape everything. What about personal wealth? Property?
It's quite radical. Personal items are fine, lightly taxed. But private land ownership, abolished. Land is leased, maximum 50 years.
So no vast inherited estates controlling resources for generations.
Precisely. And things like safe investments, basically. Permanent claims on the community's output, like passive income streams, they're discouraged. Inheritance mostly goes back to the state.
So what motivates people if not accumulating generational wealth or, the fear of poverty?
The idea is to move beyond motivation by fear that panic-stricken and violent and base struggle. Instead, they offer acutely desirable prizes for personal growth and contributing to society.
Like what kind of prizes?
Things like greater privacy, more personal space, the freedom and resources to initiate your own projects. It rewards effort and higher pursuits, not just hoarding.
And what does work itself look like day to day? Is it all grinding toil?
Quite the opposite, apparently. Machinery frees people from irksome labors. Toil, as we often think of it, isn't seen as virtuous in itself.
Everyone gets by.
Yes, a minimum wage ensures comfort and decency for all. No one falls through the cracks because of poverty.
And if the economy slows down, what happens to workers?
They have a system of public works, building infrastructure, making things to absorb any surplus labor. It provides a buffer, ensures stability and usefulness. It sounds remarkably well-planned and humane.
Okay, moving into some of the maybe more complex or even uncomfortable aspects of social regulation, how does Utopia handle population?
This is where Wells reflects some ideas of his time, drawing on Malthus. The state actively will control the increase of its population.
Control it? How and why?
The stated goal is to prevent an excess of what Wells terms citizens of mediocre and lower quality. It's quite starkly put.
That sounds problematic from a modern perspective. Eugenics adjacent, almost.
It definitely raises red flags for us today, and it extends to how they deal with individuals deemed feeble and spiritless or perverse and incompetent.
What happens to them?
They're segregated onto remote and solitary regions, or islands. They have freedom within those areas, but they're separated from the main population.
And they're told why.
Yes, the message is direct. Which do you value most, the wide world of humanity or this evil trend in you? It's a harsh judgment, presented as a societal necessity. We're just reporting what Wells wrote here, of course.
Understood. A difficult concept. What about something more universal, like marriage?
It's also quite regulated. Marriage involves a public record background checks, essentially covering convictions, property.
Public record. Interesting. And there are specific conditions.
Yes, the text mentions the wife's chastity as an unavoidable condition. Infidelity breaks the contract, and childless marriages might even expire after a set period if no children result.
Expire, wow. But there's a counterbalance for women, isn't there? Something about economic independence.
Absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
The state ensures women's economic independence, especially mothers. They receive wages above the minimum wage, specifically for mothering.
So motherhood is a paid, respected role.
Yes, it becomes a normal and remunerative calling. This removes the economic pressure that might force a woman into a mercenary marriage, as Wells puts it. It's a complex mix of regulation and empowerment.
Looking at the people themselves, the utopians, what are they like physically?
The explorers notice a general sense of health. People walk well, they have clear eyes, cleanness of blood, the text says. There's an absence of the sickness and bad habits seen in earthly crowds.
And their clothing.
Graceful, varied, and often less distinct between genders than what the explorers were used to, perhaps reflecting different social roles or just aesthetics.
Now, there's something surprising about animals.
Ah, yes. This really stands out. There's a stringent suppression of the free movement of familiar animal, cats, dogs specifically.
Suppression? Why on earth?
Because they're seen as vectors for disease, living fastnesses for pathogens.
So they sacrifice companionship with pets for public health.
It's presented exactly that way, a sacrifice of the love of animals for the greater good of health. It shows how far their rational planning extends, even into personal affections.
That's quite a trade-off. Now, who runs this whole complex society? You mentioned a specific group.
The samurai.
Yeah.
They're the governing class. But it's crucial to understand it's not an aristocracy of birth.
No. How do you become one?
It's a noble and privileged order open to the whole world. Membership is based purely on quality, choice, and development. Anyone can aspire to it if they accept the rules.
And these rules are tough, right?
Extremely. It's an austere rule of living. Think cold baths, daily shaving for men, strict sleeping arrangements alone several nights a week, communal meals, required reading.
Reading? What do they read?
Daily readings from the Book of the Samurai, plus keeping up with new publications monthly. They're expected to be constantly learning and reflecting.
And things they can't do.
Yes, they're forbidden from things like acting, singing, competitive sports, even gambling.
Why? What's the reasoning?
These activities are seen as distractions that weaken and corrupt the soul, or could lead to degeneracy. The focus is meant to be entirely on governance and self-discipline. It's a very specific vision of leadership.
Almost monastic, as you said. Do they have any spiritual practices?
They do. Annually, each samurai undertakes a solitary pilgrimage to wild, remote places, deserts, mountains outside the state's protection.
Why alone and why out there?
To deliberately step away from the insistent details of life, to reflect on the self, on space and eternity, and what one means by God.
So they have a concept of God.
Yes, but it's not monolithic. Their understanding is described as complex and of an endless variety of aspects, not tied to one doctrine. It's personal, reflective.
Fascinating. And one last difficult topic here.
Yeah.
How does this utopia handle race, given Wells was writing over a century ago?
He confronts it directly, contrasting utopia with Earth's prejudices, the stupid generalizations, and nationalistic biases.
So what's the utopian ideal?
To see people as individuals. Classification by race is dismissed as a skin-deep accident of tint or language quirk. Prejudice against mixed heritage half-breeds is rejected.
But it's not perfectly resolved, even in the narrative.
No. The botanist voices discomfort with intermarriage, showing that ingrained prejudice is hard to shake even for someone in utopia. But the narrator clarifies the goal isn't necessarily total fusion or uniformity.
More like
A synthesis of peoples, respectful coexistence, blending, rather than forcing everyone into one mold. It's a nuanced aim for its time.
This leads us into some deeper philosophical waters, doesn't it? The narrator has a specific idea, skepticism of the instrument.
Yes, it's quite profound. He basically questions the reliability of human reason itself. Our minds need to classify, to use general terms, but he argues the universe is actually made of unique things, a universe of uniques.
So our labels, our categories are always inadequate.
Exactly. They're proximate and less perfect things. Mental shortcuts to cope with infinite uniqueness, like trying to map the coastline with a ruler. You get the shape, but miss all the detail.
And this skepticism extends even to big ideas.
It does. He suggests it challenges philosophy's claim to universal truth, even ethical rules or religious teachings. He sees them more as valid forms of self-expression, rather than absolute objective truths.
That's a radical level of questioning the foundations of knowledge itself.
It really is, and it provides such a stark contrast to his companion, the botanist.
Right, the botanist. He brings the emotional, the personal back into focus constantly.
Completely. The narrator analyses, the botanist feels. The text says he thinks to feel and primarily wants to feel free and strong, not necessarily achieve grand societal goals.
He's driven by personal desires, his own history.
And this hits hard when he meets his utopian double, the version of himself who exists in this perfect world, presumably without the same emotional baggage or scars of the past.
Imagine seeing the life you could have had, maybe the relationship you missed out on, mirrored perfectly, but better.
It throws into sharp relief how individual emotions, love, jealousy, regret, these intensely personal things persist and exert huge force, even within a perfectly rational system. They can't just be engineered away.
It really underscores that this utopia, despite its logic, wasn't just wished into existence.
Absolutely not. Wells stresses it's not made by the chance, occasional cooperations of self-indulgent men. It's a product of immense effort.
It requires
Intention, will, carried to a scale that our poor, vacillating hot and cold earth has never known. It demands discipline, overcoming petty egotisms and vanities.
and a huge amount of careful planning and cooperation.
A gigantic process of inquiry, trial, forethought, and patience in an atmosphere of mutual trust and concession. It's built, consciously and deliberately, through collective will.
So as we wrap up this journey into Wells's A Modern Utopia, we're left with this constant interplay, this tension.
Between the grand logical design for society and the messy, unpredictable reality of individual human hearts and minds.
The narrator himself couldn't fully square it, could he? He talks about the incongruity between great and individual, the incompatibility I could not resolve.
That friction is palpable throughout the book. The ideal versus the deeply, sometimes irrationally human.
And that tension, it's not just in the book, is it? It feels very relevant to us right now.
Oh, absolutely. We all experience this, don't we? Trying to live up to ideals, personal, communal, global, while wrestling with our own hungers, the jealousies, the prejudices, and habits.
It's a constant struggle.
But Wells offers a sliver of hope, suggesting there are measured moments when those wider aspirations glow again with the colors of attainable desire. Moments where the ideal feels possible.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Wells noted that any vision, any utopia, becomes more fragile with every added circumstance.
The details complicate things.
So what small, seemingly insignificant human element, maybe the botanist's love life, maybe the narrator's own deep skepticism, might actually be the thing with the power to burst the bubble of even the most perfectly planned world?
And thinking about that, knowing those inherent human complexities and frailties exist, how much conscious will and imagination are you, the listener, willing to invest in shaping a better future, embracing both its grand potential and its inevitable human imperfections?